Hey friends, welcome back to the Light Up Your Metabolism podcast. I am super excited for today's episode. I never thought I could be so excited for different compounds that we're going to talk about today, sulforaphane and berberine. A lot of people are really familiar with berberine, and it's known for its blood glucose improving effects, but we're going to dive even deeper into the world of berberine and whether or not it's a potentially good compound for you to be taking. And I'm extra excited actually to talk about this compound called sulforaphane, which maybe you guys have heard about because it's found commonly in broccoli sprouts. And I am just blown away by the benefits of this compound. I'm personally working on detoxifying mold from my body, and sulforaphane is something that I'm really excited to start adding into my detox protocol. And just so you know, anything that is related to toxins and high toxic load can be a really big driver of insulin resistance, liver issues, and blood sugar problems. So it's something that I'm diving into with myself, but I'm also seeing as just this stumbling block for a lot of people when it comes to optimizing their metabolic health. And sometimes they have the food right, their light environment right, and their stress right, but their bodies are toxic. And so this is a really, really important facet that we want to start considering when it comes to optimizing our metabolic health. So today's guest, David Roberts, is going to talk all about these two incredible compounds, where you can get your hands on the best quality of this sulforaphane and great quality berberine. And so I'm super excited to welcome him onto the podcast today. I hope you guys really get a lot out of this episode. David, welcome to the Light Up Your Metabolism podcast. I'm thankful to welcome you on the show today.
Danielle, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and I'd love to start with the story of how you got into, before the interview, in the intro, I'm sharing with my audience that, a lot of people ask me about berberine specifically. They're like, is berberine worth it? Like, is it a good supplement? Should I be taking it? What is berberine? Yeah. And so we're going to be getting into that today. But how did you get into the position you're in? How did you get involved in these compounds and where you are today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, got involved in supplements when my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer back in 2012, and ended up stumbling on a gut supplement at the time, and helped started a company called Restore, that's now called Ion, and co-founded that and ended up getting that up and running, going, and then with her cancer, we ended up growing growing her cancer cells in our lab, and put about 60 different substances on them in order to see what killed her specific type of cancer. And sulforaphane, which is the good molecule from broccoli, was number 3 in killing her specific type of cancer. And so went out to buy it, and ended up not being able to find it. What I did find was something called sulforaphane glucosinolate, which is the precursor molecule. It's also known as glucoraphanin. It's the molecule that comes before sulforaphane, and which isn't sulforaphane. And so we ended up growing lots and lots of broccoli sprouts to help her. And in so doing, we at the time had a 1 and 3-year-old, and I was like, man, and because it's a commitment to grow that many, because we were juicing every day. And so I was like, it would be really nice to have a supplement that had a stable form of sulforaphane. And so my friend, John Gilday, who was the person who ended up growing her cells and doing that experiment to put different substances on her cells. He, about 3 years later, we're having lunch. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, I think I stabilized sulforaphane. And Mara and I Mara was my late wife. We were like, what in the world. And so we ended up sending it to a third-party lab. Sure enough, he had stabilized it, and we were both, working with Restore at the time, and so we're like, we'll just, we're not going to do anything with this, but and she was like, we got to do this because, she knew the research of 2,000 research papers on this molecule. A lot of them were performed up at Johns Hopkins. They were the ones that discovered the molecule back in 1992. And so she's like, we got to get this out to people. She raised the seed money, ended up taking a turn for the worse. And in September of 2017, she died. And at that point I was like, we got to get this out. And so left the Restore company and started what's now Mara Labs, after her name and in her memory. And so, yeah, BrocElite, which is the sulforaphane supplement. It sounds like broccoli, but it's BrocElite. Was the first supplement. And then actually, when she was living, we hadn't even heard of Berberine. And pretty soon after she died, I mean, she was doing ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
That was before it was popular. Like there's no information on keto. We had to pioneer it, and I was doing keto after she died, and we found this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, how it just can get you into ketosis quickly, and this magic substance, which actually is also hard to get. It's hard to get through your gut barrier, so we finagled it a little bit to get it through. So that's a little bit about the beginning of how we got going with the company and the supplements.
Yeah. First of all, I'm so sorry for your loss, and what a beautiful pain to purpose mission that you guys have. I'm very emotional. So, but that's a beautiful story, and I'm so thankful that such a powerful compound has, you guys have brought it to market. So let's dive into sulforaphane before we get to berberine, because I do think that people may be a little less familiar with this. So can you give an overview of sulforaphane, and also be sure to touch on how it can support with blood sugar, insulin resistance, detoxification, and anything else. So let's dive in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so sulforaphane, again, is the good molecule that's derived from broccoli. And it was discovered up in 1992 at Hopkins. And they actually have a whole center. It's called the Chemoprotective Center that's dedicated to this molecule. They used to grow all the broccoli sprouts, or most of the broccoli sprouts, for the various studies around the nation, including their own. I think they've moved away from that, but basically, there's a lot of research on this molecule. I think there are 38 pro health mechanisms in the science literature. We talk about and so it can sound a little bit like snake oil. It does that too. It does that. Yeah, it works with that. And so we talk about, we highlight 3: detox, inflammation, and brain health. And so, basically it turns on this pathway called NRF2, which is really important in a lot of things, but I think of it as sort of the anti-inflammatory pathway. And so what it actually does also is it turns on 200 different antioxidants. And so if you think of vitamin C as one vitamin C molecule negates one pro-oxidant, what sulforaphane does is it actually modulates the gene to then turn on, or genes relate to that, turn on 200 antioxidants, different antioxidants that stay on for 72 hours. And so it's actually, in some ways, a master antioxidant. And so That's one of the things that it does. Detoxification is big nowadays, and what it actually does is it works. Sulforaphane works in all three phases of detox, and so everyone's probably heard of their own flavor and different gurus having a detox program. Use my detox program, and unfortunately, some of them are good. Most of them um, are heavy on phase one detox, which basically phase one. If you think of phase one as it's making the toxin less toxic. Phase two, it's making it water soluble so it can get into serum. Phase three, binding and excreting. A lot of phase one, if that's sped up, which a lot of detox programs do, you can get something called, that where you don't feel.
Cytochrome
Yeah.
P450.
Cytochrome P450, and you basically feel bad. Yeah, and people affectionately call it the detox flu. And so
Okay,
yeah,
so if you're, just to conceptualize this in my head, there's 3 stages of detox. The first one, you're kind of making it a little bit less toxic, but I believe that sometimes after step 1, it could become a little more toxic with certain substances, but is that the case?
yeah. I mean, it it's chemically altering it
Okay.
basically, and the gist is it's taking the toxin and making it less toxic, but really that chemical reaction, it's whatever it is, it's the purpose is to get it out of the body, right? You're showing it the exit, and so in general, it's making it less toxic. I'm sure there are, I don't know, I couldn't give you an exact
Yeah.
chemical where it makes it more toxic, but it's more the even though like what makes the detox flu is you just have a lot of things going on, and a lot of if you're mobilizing the toxin, even if it's less toxic, you have more of it kind of that your
In the
body's seeing
system.
it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you feel sick
Right,
basically.
because it's if the other phases are not upregulated, so like, okay, make it water soluble, get it out of the body. If that gets backed up, then yes, you've liberated all these toxins in the
Yeah.
system, and so yeah, I would imagine you don't feel good. That would
So
be like Herxheimer reaction type
it can
things,
be,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Okay.
so the beauty of sulforaphane is it actually slows down the phase one. And
Okay.
so, which is not unique, but it's not, it's a little different than, you think of
Interesting.
detox as everything's sped up, but it actually slows phase one, and it's the best natural molecule at phase two detox. And so it just
Wow.
revs up phase two, and then, but it also works in phase three. So having one molecule do all three, again, not unique, but when somebody's like, what's something good to do for detox, I always say sulforaphane,
Yeah.
because you can save on, oh, let's take this tea and take this pill and do this, and you just do one thing. So
Yeah, that's really cool. So I'm working on a detoxification protocol right now because I did testing and I have a lot heavy mold burden as some other toxins, but lots and lots of mold.
yeah.
And I have MTHFR. I'm just in general not that good of a detoxifier. And what I was noticing was that some of the stuff that I was doing, like taking some binders and things like that, were causing me to have allergy symptoms. And
Mm,
so this is something that I'm super excited to add in to see how it impacts how I'm able to detoxify, because we're having to kind of slow things down a lot because I'm kind of getting that backup. So I wonder if some of these things, like I'm so excited to take this stuff and try it with my protocol, because I think it can be really helpful. And yeah, with all these pieces.
yeah, I would. No, it's unfortunately your story is not uncommon, and and while mold's mold, and so one of the frequent asked questions we get is, what is, does sulforaphane stop mold? It doesn't stop mold. No. How can
No.
it stop mold? But what it does is, again, these spores, or the different mold, I guess spores that you get and that you breathe in, that it does help with the toxins that they generate. And
Hmm.
so that, those, it can be helpful with that, but that stopping the source of them is super, super important for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that is something that I'm seeing. This toxicity burden is one of the biggest drivers I'm seeing of blood sugar and insulin dysregulation, because
Uh,
the liver is just so important for blood sugar regulation. And I've heard someone call it like the soccer mom organ. Like the liver has so much to do. And like when it's overburdened with this high toxic burden, and it's trying to detoxify and go through all these phases of detoxification, it's it's not having adequate time and resources to support optimizing blood sugar regulation. And it's also a known thing. I learned from Ben Bickman that as you increase your toxicity, you drive up insulin resistance. So when we talk about metabolic health, toxicity is a huge driver of poor metabolic health. So I can see how this could be, and as well as inflammation, I can see how this could be a really important support for helping, sort of maybe not directly, but indirectly supporting metabolic health.
yeah. Yeah. And I love that you have integrated that, because, uh, unfortunately, our allopathic medical system, by necessity, really, it's not necessarily, though I do have criticisms, but
Mm-hmm.
this isn't one of them. They have specialties, right? And so people can look at, you know 3 centimeters, that their whole lives are spent on like that much of your body, and you're really glad that they do, because when something's happening there, you want them to be specialists. And so with the specialties, we have this idea that our bodies are separate. So our liver is different than our pancreas, is different than our brain, is different than our gut. But really, they're all functionally coupled. They all work off of each other and are integrated very intimately. And so it makes complete sense that if your liver is not working, your metabolic health, it can be off. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just, there is a sense of whole health and holistic health, the health of the whole being. And so, yeah, I think that that's really true. And interestingly, I will say, the liver does take a major burden of detoxification, but every cell in your body actually detoxifies. And
Yep.
so one of the things that we have focused on in our research is, the toxin called glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. And
Mm-hmm.
so glyphosate, unfortunately, it's what you spray it on the genetically modified organisms that have been modified genetically to receive Roundup, to receive glyphosate, and live. Whereas it's other weeds get killed, um, and so again, most of the GMOs, that glyphosate and Roundup gets washed off, but there's just even very um, micro amounts, very small amounts that gets in, and then because it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. Um, High fructose corn syrup, soybean oil, and it's everywhere in
It's
our
in the
our
water. Yeah.
it's in the water, it's in
The
processed foods.
air.
And so you just have this bioaccumulation over time. And that specifically glyphosate actually can reduce the phase 2 detox
Mm.
by 30%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually that's enough to really, it could kill you essentially. And so
Mm.
the BrocElite, the sulforaphane, actually reverses that depletion, or that reduction in phase 2 activity. it actually brings it back to normal. And so, we
Amazing.
call, I think it was Jeffrey Smith, who is sort of the uh, Roundup for guy, calls glyphosate the mother of all toxins because of what it does with phase 2 detox. And so
Mm.
it's really comforting to know that there are ways you can fight against it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know, for example, one thing I've used that has supported the detoxification of glyphosate is fulvic and humic minerals. So I'm a big fan of being minerals. I talk about them a lot on the show, but I love, having different things to add to the toolkit and how this is specializing in supporting the liver. So that's really cool to know. So you mentioned, I think we mentioned anti-inflammatory. Did we talk about that yet? And brain health?
Yeah, I will say, so the fulvic in the Restore, which is the first supplement company we started, um, we actually did the original research on glyphosate and fulvic, but
Oh,
really
cool.
the tight junctions there, and the NRF2 is responsible for tight junctions and gut health, but that pathway is also responsible for phase 2 detox. And
Mm,
so the sulforaphane again is the best natural molecule at that turning on NRF2. Um, and so separate from NRF2 though is the brain health. And
yeah.
so basically it turns on a molecule called brain derived
Neurotrophic.
neurotrophic factor, BDNF. And so in the literature, that's at the center of brain health. And so, you can read about different diseases and how BDNF is impacted, um, and how sulforaphane can stimulate the BDNF.
Mm-hmm.
But in our research, but also our customer service, just people are like, I don't think sulforaphane, I don't think your product really works. When I was doing everything when we first got started, I'd be doing customer service calls, and I'm like, yeah, we have a 100-day unconditional money back guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ever, you don't think it works? Absolutely, we'll refund your money. Let me ask you a question though. Have you had any vivid dreams lately? And there's pause. No way. That's this. And so
Mm-hmm.
sulforaphane and the vivid can cause vivid dreaming, which is the brain derived nootropic factor, the BDNF, and leading towards sort of the neuroplasticity, the regeneration of um, or the protection of existing neurons and actually creation of new neurons. And so that's
Wow.
when I went through science, biology, we thought, you lose them and that's done. But now the science is further. It's that you actually can grow new neurons, and the BDNF is
Really?
responsible for that. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. I had no idea. That's awesome. So it's supportive for brain health, which is another thing. Do you notice, do you hear of clients talking about reduction in things like brain fog, any sort of mood issues? Like what other sort of, just obviously this is not like, we're not making claims here, but what have you just sort of heard from some clients in terms of their brain health that they've
Yeah,
experienced?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, we're always very careful
Hmm.
about talking about claims because of,
Hmm.
the supplements can't treat,
Hmm.
diagnose, cure,
Hmm.
or prevent any disease state. And so, but I will say, we were on, if you've heard of Dave Asprey,
Hmm.
he took, we were on his podcast, and he had been taking it for about 4 years, which we didn't know. And we knew about half of what sulforaphane did. So we're kind of updating him on the other parts. He's like, this sounds amazing. And so he grabs a bottle,
Hmm.
takes some, and about 5 minutes later, he's like, I had brain fog. And
Hmm.
he's like, I really like it just lifted. He's like,
Hmm.
is this placebo? Is it, And
Hmm.
so Typically, people aren't self-aware enough to see it lifting or feel it lifting that quickly. But that is from the brain fog standpoint. The sulforaphane is water soluble. It does get through the blood-brain barrier, and it is directly impactful in neuroinflammation in the brain. But the gut-brain connection, again, being really a good one of basically the best molecule at regulating leaky gut and gut health. It's powerful in helping with both the brain fog and that sort of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I just imagine it would be if it helps with the detoxification piece that much, anti-inflammatory. It just sounds like it has all the makings of something that could support the brain in that way.
Yeah, yeah. I will. One kind of vignette is I bring BrocElite to holiday parties, Christmas parties, and so and that's because um, if people are drinking alcohol, it actually
Mm,
will help kind of real time processing of the toxin. That's what alcohol is. It's a toxin. And
yes.
so, people, it'll help them feel a bit better than they would have otherwise the next day. From not
Yeah.
just from the detox standpoint, but alcohol in general, the first step in processing alcohol is to turn it into an aldehyde. And that
Mm.
aldehyde is what makes you age. It's what makes you hungover. And sulforaphane bypasses that step. And so you're actually, so it's a 1-2 punch. It detoxes, but it also helps skip that step.
That's really cool. I
Yeah.
don't drink because of how bad it makes me feel.
Yeah.
So if I ever want like a half a glass of red wine, maybe I'll take some of the broccoli with it and see how I
Yeah.
do. So
Yeah.
yeah, really cool. So you mentioned that there's just kind of like the three that you guys talk about in terms of benefits, but that there's like this laundry list of potential benefits and stuff
Yes.
of sulforaphane. Do you have
Yeah.
a couple other that you might be able to rattle off? Just, I mean, I don't need a comprehensive list, but anything else that you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah. I do.
Okay.
So, aging. So it has, I think, 6 different mechanisms that make sulforaphane anti-aging.
Mm,
Um, so we talk about autophagy. So
mm-hmm.
autophagy being helping, you have these cells that are old and need to be shown the door as far as death,
Mm-hmm.
and so um, sulforaphane actually helps uh, the body and the cells really communicate enough so that those the cells that need to be recycled and
Turned
killed,
over. Yeah,
turned over. It helps with it, so that's called autophagy,
that's really cool.
um, and that help. It's a lot of that you hear about autophagy mainly in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
but close cousins to that is something called mitophagy. And
Mm-hmm.
so with mitochondria, if you think about, energy and the whole metabolic health, a lot of metabolic health is your um, people walking around with mitochondria that are suboptimal. And so they're just not functioning. So if you think about energy, glucose turns into something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. It's fueling the this mechanism that occurs in mitochondria called it's called
Cellular
3 different things. It's TCA cycle,
Krebs
electron
cycle.
phosphorylation, or the Krebs cycle is what I call it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all the same thing.
Yep.
And basically you get one glucose in, one ATP out. And I like to think of glucose as sort of money in the bank. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's stored, it's saved, but really cash is the usable form of money. You can go to really anywhere, most places now are
Mm-hmm.
actually less places now, but it's a usable form of money, and ATP is the usable form of energy. It's in cells. And so basically, I think I can use that analogy a few more years before it
A
stops.
few more years before you can't use it anymore.
Anyway, but yeah, so
Yeah.
basically, if you can actually get new and kind of improved and highly functioning mitochondria, well, all of a sudden your metabolic health is that much better. And so the mitophagy is actually killing and recycling old mitochondria and whereas to make room for new. And so both of those are really important in the aging aspect.
Yes.
And sort of a vanity, not exactly vanity, but like with men's hair loss, it blocks the form of testosterone that can lead to balding in men.
DHT.
DHT, yep. And interestingly, though, we have about a half dozen testimonials of people whose hair came back, but they're all women.
Wow.
And
Interesting.
which is, we're like, we were talking about this yesterday, actually. We're like, we need to get figured out exactly what that is.
Well, women, I wonder if they have PCOS and they are making a lot of that dihydrotestosterone. That could be
It
maybe
could be,
something at play.
could be.
So,
But
yeah.
it's our first two were older women in their like late 70s, early 80s that it just came back, and they're like,
Wow.
we love you so much,
Oh, wow. That's
and
amazing.
but then there's also been younger women now, and so
Yeah.
whatever that is,
Yeah.
the men won't share their stories with us. I don't know why, but I think I would be bald if I wasn't taking it, because it
Wow.
certainly runs in my family. So
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. Lots of great benefits. I've talked a lot about autophagy on the show, probably in earlier episodes, but we have talked about mitophagy recently. And it's like if you think you have a factory and there's 100 machines in there, and then 50 of them stop working, where are you going to put 50 new machines? So our cells are functioning at this like lessened capacity because we can't get rid of these broken machines that are no longer producing for the factory. So we have to take them out in order to be able to make space for the new ones. And that process is called mitophagy. So a lot of people, when they are struggling with aging, it's because their cells are working at this reduced capacity and they don't have to. So
yeah,
using these types of, there's a lot of things there are several things that improve mitophagy, but we can get really specific with using targeted interventions like this to help upregulate that. And that has just such broad effects on the whole system, because when you go down to a cellular level, you're not like, oh, it's this one thing and it has this like amazing, like it works for this one thing really well. It's like, no, you're going to get like a whole broad improvement, because if all your cells are making more energy, that doesn't just mean like, oh, I feel more energized, I need less coffee, but then your heart can be a better heart because it has more energy to do all the heart things it needs. Or like
yes,
you're like in your muscle cells, you're able to like get rid of some of the damage, like you're able to do more of the functions that each of these cells need to do. Our cells, we don't think of it like that, but they have hundreds and thousands of tasks to do at every second. And if we're not doing those things, they get put on the back burner. It's like, oh, guess we're not going to repair the wall of this artery. Like, guess we're not going to detoxify this today, or guess we're not going to convert this hormone because it's running out of energy. So our body needs energy to do things. And so that's a huge piece of metabolic health. And so if anything's going to upregulate things like autophagy, mitophagy, and support our energy production, that's directly helping our metabolic health. So love it.
yes, that's a great summary. I love what you just said. Yeah,
Yeah. So do we feel like we summed up a sulforaphane enough? Is there anything else that we want to talk about and share with that?
yeah. I mean, we grew broccoli sprouts. You can grow broccoli sprouts.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the one issue with sprouting is you got to make sure that you have a good source, that
Yeah, I was
they
going to
have
ask about
shown
that.
that it has the ability to make sulforaphane in its glucoraphanin content. So just real quickly, if you have a head of broccoli, you start chewing it.
Mm-hmm.
The glucoraphanin, which is the chemical that comes before sulforaphane, it's in the broccoli. You break down the cell wall through chewing,
Mm-hmm.
and that releases an enzyme in the cell wall that then converts the glucoraphanin into sulforaphane. You swallow it, you get the benefit. Well, broccoli sprouts, broccoli seeds, broccoli sprouts, mature broccoli, the mature broccoli plant, it all has the same amount of sulforaphane. And so, using seeds or sprouts, it has much more concentrated amounts of sulforaphane. Um, but we tested a lot of, like, I think in 5 different brands on Amazon, and none of them, or I think four out of 5 had no ability to make sulforaphane. They're organic. And then a year later, 6 months later, we did 9. We expanded it. And thankfully, at that point, only 1 didn't make
Mm-hmm.
sulforaphane. But the big question was, what the heck is going on there? And so we sell seeds on our website. We're not a seed company.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit pricey because we want to offer it, but we don't want to become a seed company. But
Mm-hmm.
every half pound can make 400 milligrams of sulforaphane. And so that's just something to keep in mind if you want to go that route.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the seed companies will have their own analyses that proves it, but I'd make sure, because last thing you want to do is being dependent on growing and wasting your time in doing that.
You sell it in supplement form too, though, right? Because I'm going to be honest, I don't want to be sprouting broccoli, and I
Well,
don't want to be tasting it. I
yeah,
don't want to
no,
taste the
it can be,
sprouts.
and that's the main reason we ended up making the supplement is,
Okay.
a lot of people who need it the most can't swallow, a broccoli sprout beverage because it's nasty.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to swallow.
Yeah.
For those of you who are bound and determined to do it, add some citrus like lime juice, cuts it,
Okay.
and that actually is a little secret. But yeah, we basically created a supplement form in a capsule, which one capsule has the amount of 2.5 pounds of mature broccoli, the same amount of sulforaphane you get on
Wow.
average. And so we suggest one or two capsules a day, depending on, if you're just getting started, one's plenty, and
Mm-hmm.
you should notice a difference. And then as you kind of settle in, a lot of people want to jump to that second dose, so 2 a day,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and so, basically we offered that because Mara was doing, she was pretty sick, and she was trying to do the broccoli sprout juice, and we did it. We had a juice with the carrots, and that cut it, cut the taste, but it's really tough. And so
Yeah.
having it in a capsule, and it's a small capsule, just allows more people to take it. Kids can take it. My kids started taking it when they were 7 and 9,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a kids version for people who who want to be kind of get their kids in a little more slowly. It has half the amount of sulforaphane.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some people who are on the more sensitive side. I work with a lot of people who are really sensitive, so I think that having an option with a smaller dose could be supportive for people who tend to like react to everything. So that's good to know
absolutely.
as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
and so
cool.
and so one of the things just to keep in mind too is, it's um, we we are one of 2 brands that have the stable form of sulforaphane in the capsule. All of the
Oh,
other brands out there have glucoraphanin, or it's called sulforaphane glucosylate, which is the molecule that comes before sulforaphane. But a lot of these brands have become more bullish, and they'll say sulforaphane, even
but
on
it's
the
not.
ingredients label. If you ask for the certificate of analysis, it will be glucoraphanin. And so you just, unfortunately, it is
Yeah.
it is what it is. So we have it. and we're a naturally derived form. There's one that's chemically derived called Prostophane out of France. That's, again, if you're wanting sulforaphane, you can get Prostophane, but ours is actually the whole. It has sulforaphane, but it also has 9 other cousin molecules that come from the seed, so we can get all of those out. It's a kind of a holistic. It's just like the seed would be. So
Amazing. Does it work on the glucuronidation pathway by any chance?
remind.
I'm just wondering
All of a
because
sudden,
of
all of these pathways have converged. Remind me the glucuronidation. Give me a.
I don't know, but I just know that a lot of molds need to detox through that pathway. And then the prefix of the first word that you said, that what most sulforaphane
Oh
supplements
yeah,
are claiming to
glucoraphanin.
be. Yeah. So I was just wondering if it does go down that pathway, but we can
I'm not
talk
sure.
another time.
I'm not sure. Yeah, basically, the molecule has a glucose off of it, and so the
Oh,
enzyme cleaves
okay.
the glucose to make sulforaphane. That's the
Okay.
glucoraphanin. That's what glucoraphanin is. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's switch gears and talk about berberine now. So let's kind of do the same thing that we did and talk
Yeah.
about berberine, its benefits, and of course, a lot of people know it to support metabolic health.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Unlike sulforaphane, which is gets through the gut barrier, it's water soluble. It's actually both water soluble and fat soluble, but it has no problem crossing the gut barrier. Berberine actually is what we call lipid soluble or fat soluble. And so it does have problems getting through the gut barrier. In fact, less than 1%, but 0.06% gets through the gut barrier. And so that's just a very tiny amount. And so, if you think about water soluble versus fat soluble, it's like, oil and vinegar. And so you have that distinct line. So basically, water soluble vitamins like vitamin C and sulforaphane, they get through the gut barrier because they're water soluble, whereas fat soluble vitamins or phytochemicals don't. And so what we do, and kind of given the history of where Mara was and wanting to help her body, all of how we think and how we approach supplements is making sure that these phytochemicals, these plant-based chemicals, get through the gut barrier in a biologically relevant dose. So
Mm,
it not just gets through, but then it goes to the cells, gets in the cells, and makes a difference to the biology. And
mm.
so with sulforaphane, it was impacting NRF2 and it was impacting BDNF with
It
uh,
does, by the way, go down support glucuronidation. I looked it up, and
right,
it does, which is amazing. It supports phase 2 detox, which, yeah, so it does. And
okay,
that's helpful for mold toxins. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that
all
in.
right. Thank you
Yeah,
for
sure,
doing.
sure.
We thank Google. I don't know if you
Mm.
used Google just now, but
Chat GPT.
okay, yeah, yeah. So anyway, with berberine,
Hmm.
um, that the benefits we often talk about are modulating blood glucose, as you alluded to, but also sleep. And so
Mm.
when I actually, I heard about berberine, and we ended up wanting to make sure, that we had a supplement uh, that was great for stimulating ketosis, um, for people who are into the ketogenic diet. And so I was fanning out for testimonials, and so I emailed all of the people who had purchased our supplement. And
Mm.
so, and what came back actually was 75% of them were taking it for sleep. And so I was like, what's this? And so I did a PubMed search and looked in the science literature. And sure enough, it's one of my favorite papers now. It's how berberine is better than Valium as a sleep aid. And so basically, the reasons for that is that, and this is just regular berberine that can basically, that only 0.06% gets through the gut barrier. And so it stimulates dopamine by 25%, dopamine being that feel good molecule that people are going for when they eat it, some chocolate or a cookie or something, or when at the slots or something like that. And then also it stimulates serotonin, 30%. And so that was what that paper showed. Actually, a different paper showed it increasing oxytocin, the kind of mother's love, to the baby molecule, 15%. So it's doing, for sleep, it's doing, those are the mechanisms going on there. But if you can imagine, and we'll talk about blood glucose, if you eat a meal late, basically, and you have high blood sugar throughout the night, you can imagine how that might impact sleep too. And so, so going to like blood glucose, we noticed that I have a blood glucose monitor. It was before the real-time blood glucose monitors, right? And so I still actually prefer the finger sticks. And so basically looking at glucose, looking at ketones, we noticed that it was working pretty quickly. And so we did a little study. And so you basically eat dinner. You don't eat overnight. You actually skip breakfast, but take two of Berberines. Our Berberine brand name is called BrocElite, similar to BrocElite, BrocElite. So take two BrocElites, and at 7 by noon, you'll be in ketosis, light ketosis. So you'll have ketones that are measurable, and your blood glucose will dip. And that's for anybody who's done, the ketogenic diet, ketosis. That's relatively remarkable because it's hard to get into ketosis. It's not super easy. So, and so within the cell, what's going on is it's stimulating what's called AMP kinase, and so which again works with metabolism and cell functioning and that sort of thing. And so, so basically, our berberine is it's one of the it's actually the hardest plant-based molecule to work with because it's really hard to find how to make it soluble. So it's not soluble in water. There's no solvents that are soluble. And so it's hard to do a blood plasma study on it. We've tried, but how you can determine its bioavailability is looking at its functionality. And that's, so basically normal berberine drops blood glucose as well. Okay, and you'll read about it in science literature, but it takes about 30 days. BrocElite will drop the blood glucose in about 4 hours, 5 hours.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
so it's night and day. So and that's because it's getting it through the gut barrier.
Amazing. Yeah. So I have a lot of people who have hypoglycemia. So I don't recommend this for the hypo people. But for people with persistent high blood sugar, that could be a really cool thing to add in. And what's the dosing like? I'm sure it's different for everybody and you can't sort of recommend a specific dosing, but would you say that it would be something you could take like one capsule before each meal to help support the blood sugar lowering? Does it work like that?
It does work
Hmm.
that way.
Hmm.
And so, it depends on your meal, right? And so if you're having starches and you're looking to avoid the glucose spike, this could
Hmm.
help with that.
Hmm.
Taking it, um, 30 minutes before or so, or even if you take it with it,
Yeah.
the glucose spike doesn't happen immediately. And so
Mm.
the capsule, along with the food, will be processed within a couple hours, and so it
Hmm.
can mitigate the spike. We recommend kind of the biggest bang for the buck is to get, because most people will eat late, and for the sleep factor, it's just taking two at night before
Okay.
bed, or
Hmm.
right after, during or right after the late meal. And so you're mitigating the glucose spike and you're getting the sleep benefits as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of not eating late. I talk about that very often on my podcast. I talk
Good for
about
you.
not skipping breakfast because our blood sugar response to meals is the worst at night. I always say when the sun goes down, insulin clocks out. Our bodies are not meant to be digesting and metabolizing food that late. And so but sometimes it's unavoidable, right? The family's having dinner. We're going out for a reservation. It's at 7:30 p.m. I'm like, oh gosh. So we don't have to be perfectionists about this, but it can be a really great tool to help. What a great idea is to help support if you are stuck having a late meal or if you do want the sleep benefits. I love having these, again, tools in our toolbox to use to help mitigate some of the damage and be really supportive, probably especially of overnight blood glucose. Do you find that people have fewer wake ups when they use this? Because that's a big issue I see.
Um,
Might be hard to say.
so I wouldn't say, actually, I can comment on that. I wouldn't,
Okay.
I think, so yeah, yes, I would say marginally fewer wake ups, but I'd say even more important than that, or as important, is if you wake up,
Mm-hmm.
have just one capsule next to your bed and
Okay.
take it when you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I've done that, I'll go back to sleep, and it'll be so I'll just. I mean, you can do that. Since I own the company, I
Mm-hmm.
have access to all the products. We have a sleep product, which is
Oh.
mainly made up. It's probably three-fourths made up of BrocElite and Berberine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll take one of, or we call it Sleep Elite.
Oh.
Sleep Elite. We'll take I'll take one capsule of that, one capsule of Berberine, one
Mm-hmm.
capsule of broccoli. Um, and I don't always have all of them, and so I'll take what I have. And sometimes it's just Berberine, actually, because we've been selling out of the broccoli recently.
Uh-huh.
But I'll take what I have, and inevitably, this I'm not exaggerating. No, I won't just go back to sleep, but it will be the best sleep, and I'll wake
Wow.
up, even if it's 3 hours, 4 hours later, and I'm like, that was, and I'm like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
It was the best sleep. So,
Yeah. What's in
um,
the sleep supplement? What
sleep,
else
sleep,
is in there?
yeah. So it's sleep and mood. So if you think about it, some people who have mood issues
Mm-hmm.
have trouble sleeping. Some people who have trouble sleeping develop mood issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, it is, like I mentioned, Berberine or Berberine. It's the broccoli powder,
Mm-hmm.
and which has sulforaphane. We'll have 5-HTP, which is the
Precursor to
precursor
serotonin.
to serotonin. We'll have tryptophan, which is the precursor to 5-HTP.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have basically a B vitamin P5P, which is the methylated form of B6. And so if you
Oh.
think about it, people with mood issues oftentimes have trouble methylating their B vitamins.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the methylated form, but we also have a methyl donor, which can drive the methylation. And if you think about a chemical reaction, anybody who's done chemistry, if you have all of a sudden one of the reagents and a lot of it, it can drive, even if it's kind of stuck, can drive the chemical reaction. And so that's
Cool.
the rationale there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. So we have a special deal for the listeners for all of these supplements at mara-labs.com. That's MARA and then the hyphen labs.com. And if you do a /Dani Health, that's DANI Health, then you can get up to a 28% discount. So I am going to be hopping on and buying some
Yeah,
right after this. So I'm really excited to try all of these products and especially see how they're impacting the blood glucose of my clients and for me, my own detoxification protocol. So I'm really
yeah.
excited.
So Mara Labs, mara-labs.com,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the /
Mm-hmm.
Danny Health
Mm-hmm.
for the 28% off. So that,
Yeah.
yeah. And so if you have any questions, again, we have a 100-day, 100% money back guarantee. We recommend people
Wow.
try it because we do know that they work, but we give the money back guarantee because everyone's different. And so it may not work for you, and it's okay. We'll give you your money
Mm-hmm.
back. So,
Yeah. Wow, that's a really good deal and a lot of integrity. And it sounds like the idea of making these, like caring about the quality of the supplements and testing for the potency of them and making sure they're absorbable. These are all things that we look for and that we want our supplements to be doing.
yeah, we make everything in Charlottesville, Virginia. We
Mhm.
make it, ship it. We're sort of a microbrewery, but with supplements,
I love that.
handcrafted, and we have no fillers and we have no flow
Wow.
agents. So it's just the molecules that we're putting in there. We stuff, and that's the reason is
Amazing.
we want to stuff as much as possible into the capsule. So
Awesome. I love that. I really enjoyed this conversation and taking this deep dive into
yeah,
these really cool supportive compounds. So thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Danielle, thank you so much for having me. It's
Yeah.
been wonderful chatting.